So welcome to the Good Bloke, Not Woke podcast, where we discuss healthy masculinity from many, many different perspectives. And today I have the pleasure of having a chat with the legendary Australian comedy act, the Nelson Twins. So we've got Chris in the middle, of course everybody knows that, and this is Justin. And I believe I've just found out that Justin's a little bit older. That's why he's got a little bit of grey in his beard, which demonstrates wisdom, I suppose.
Yeah, either that or stress, JT, because I've been carrying this bloke for the last 20 years.
That's no good. So, guys, I mean, wow. I mean, there's so many areas that I want to explore with you because, I read a book many, many years ago called Anatomy of an Illness by Norman Cousins. And Norman Cousins was a guy who had terrible disease called ankylosing spondylitis. They called it collagen disease back then. And it's an inflammatory disease where it affects the back and slowly the inflammation builds calcification where the whole spine becomes calcified and locks up and the nerve tissues are compressed and it's incredibly painful. And he got to the point where he was so ill, he was in hospital and his doctor said, look, mate, this is where you're going to have to stay. We can manage your pain and keep you comfortable until, you leave us. And after a couple of days, he called the doctor and he said, I'm going to check into a hotel. He goes, I'm not staying here. And the doctor said, why? And he said, because people around me are dying. He said, why would I want to stay here? He said, check into the hotel. There's a bit more room. It's a bit more open. He said, it's a bit more comfortable, a bit cheaper, And the doctor said, fair enough, I can't stop you. And he said, I want you to check in on my medication. So he was taking oral morphine for pain, And anyway, he got a friend of his to get him an old projector, and he got all these Candid Camera episodes, Marx Brothers films, and Three Stooges episodes. Three Stooges were my favourite. And he lay there in bed watching this stuff, and he worked out that a 10-minute belly laugh gave him 2 hours of pain relief.
Yeah.
And he had no clue why. And one day the doctor was in there and he said, hey, you're not taking all your pills. What's going on? And he explained what was happening, and the doctor thought, wow, that's interesting. So he started helping him find different ways to amuse himself. Got to the point where he felt so good, he moved back home and he went back to work.
Wow.
Now, he died in 1990, but he checked himself into that hotel in 1964.
Amazing.
Laughter is the best medicine.
And that's his quote.
Yep.
And
That's his quote.
It's his quote. And he also called it laughter is internal jogging. And so I want to talk to you guys about comedy because there's too much seriousness in the world right now, yeah?
You are so right. And that's the first time I've ever heard anyone gauge what laughter can do for you physically. Yeah, and it's amazing. Chriso, we've been peddling that bike for a long time that laughter's the best medicine, haven't we?
We have. I'm not sure whether watching you live on stage is going to give you that longevity of life. When you mentioned Three Stooges, I thought, yeah, slapstick comedy, that's Juzzo to a T.
Well, I'm sure the big pharmaceutical companies don't want to hear that laughter's the best medicine, JT.
No, but they're probably the biggest joke in town, right?
Absolutely. Although we have done some gigs for pharmaceutical companies, and I can't remember that last one. I probably won't mention their name on your podcast, but
JT probably works for them as well.
but they were great. They were great.
What's it called? Secret commissions? Yeah.
Yeah.
But, in that, you guys do a lot of work around footy clubs at the moment and you're lovers of cricket. And as you know, I spoke to Greg Chappell this morning. And
This must be a bit of a letdown going
Yeah,
from
it's
Greg
a
Chappell.
little underwhelming going from Greg Chappell, the great Greg Chappell, to the Nelson Twins.
no, it's a different stratosphere.
Well said.
It's good.
Well
It's a different
said.
stratosphere. But, one of the things I always loved being around footy clubs is the humour and the teasing. Now, people coming in from the outside might look at it and think, oh, they're bullying that guy because they're giving him a hard time. But it's actually very good-natured.
Banter. We
Yeah.
call it the banter.
And it's like, wokeness and political correctness have tried to sanitize that. But I don't know. I think that it's so important. You guys, obviously, did you guys have nicknames when you were coming through sport?
Well, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
Twin.
Yeah, Twin. Yeah, people couldn't remember our name, so they just called it Twin. And it's interesting to say people are trying to sanitise it. If you don't let it be sanitised, I don't think we let it be sanitised. We're on a couple of great little Facebook. What is it? I've forgotten the name of the technology. What's the other one?
WeChat.
WeChat.
No, I don't know. I can't even think what it is.
We're on a couple of little groups with the people
Yeah.
that we play sport with, and we're not being sanitised. We just keep the banner up, and
That's right. And it's a massive part of our philosophy, JT. We're on a journey to make sure that people never lose their sense of humour.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a great idea. I mean, I had to keep mine because when I first started playing senior footy at Marsland Old Collegians, I was a big kid, and they were nicknaming me Tail Light. Right? And it took me a while to find out what that meant, and it was not bright enough to be a headlight,
yeah.
You got it, right?
We've got a bald guy that we play cricket with, and we call him Toe Ball. He looks like the toe ball on the back of your car.
It's a good nickname, but then later on I thought, okay, I've got to man up a bit here. So I trained like a mad person, got super fit, and then they nicknamed me Sauce. And I didn't know what sauce meant until I was 45. They finally later on, it was Son of Spartacus.
Ah,
It was a
yeah.
much more respectful nickname, yeah?
Yeah.
But I think that that whole thing about having fun with each other and teasing, it's like, it's so crucial. I mean, you go inside footy clubs now, you guys do a fair bit of touring and talking footy clubs and talking mental health with Justin Kaczynski. What are you seeing out there?
We're seeing football clubs, I think, probably trying to move towards that inclusion type atmosphere, which I guess is coming at the expense of humour. So, yeah, and I don't know how you change that. All Chris and I can do is keep peddling our boat and making sure that we do our thing to make sure that people don't lose their sense of humour, and inclusion and diversity. It's a big thing at the moment. I think it's worth about $8 billion a year in the American market. So maybe we're doing the wrong thing, JT. Maybe we need to be moving towards inclusion and diversity.
Well, yeah, so DEI, I think, is going to DIE before too long, because some big companies in the US are dropping it.
Yeah, right.
Because it doesn't work. You cannot level the playing field, no matter what, And and I think we're going to come back to our own humanity, because teasing people is an act of friendliness. If it's done with a really good intention. If it's done to dominate, it doesn't feel good. Yeah? But we know the difference.
Yeah. Well, we've got a great sense of humour. You can't look like this and not expect someone to say something about it.
Yeah, that's
right. My wife is number one for teasing me at different times.
Yeah, and as you know, JT, Chris's wife is from Thailand, and for the people that are watching and listening, but she has an amazing sense of humour, and I think that comes from perhaps her background growing up in Thailand, where humour is suppressed.
Yeah.
Well, can you make jokes about the royal family?
No, it's not that humour's suppressed. They just have a different lot of rules. There are certain things you can't say. You can't talk about the royal.
In my opinion, that's suppressed, then, isn't it?
Well, I guess so. Yeah. You can't talk about the royal family. There's a limit to what you can talk about in regards to politics. So I think that's what my wife finds so great over here, is that in Australia you can talk about whatever you like, and sure, people get critical about it, but my wife and I, we have a great sense of humour.
Yeah. Oh, you guys do.
Yeah. Well, you got to have it.
Your wife's got. Well, you're not married, but
Yeah, she's
what do you call her? Girlfriend, partner?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, she's got a good sense of humour too.
She's got an amazing sense of humour, hence our connection. Yeah.
I mean, my wife Lasson's got a great sense of humour. You guys have met her. She can get really serious about things, but when she laughs, it's the most infectious laugh of all,
Yeah. What number wife are we talking about here? Sorry, John, just...
I don't use numbers, I use letters. I had rehearsals,
Well, exactly.
But, with all due respect to my first two wives, I was with the first one for 10 years, then 21 years for the second one. So I'm looking for about 40 years with Lassen at least, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's an absolute stunner, JT.
Yeah.
Absolute stunner. You've done well for yourself there. And we met JT's wife only a couple of months ago.
Yeah, up in Brisbane, yeah.
And, mate, I've got to tell you, when we left the restaurant, Chris and I looked at each other and we went, man, we can't wait till we get old and bald.
Yeah, well, a lot of my footy mates are telling me I'm punching above my weight. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's an extraordinary person, you know.
Indeed.
And have you spoken about the wedding on your podcast previously? Because I followed you on social media and
A little bit, I think.
saw
but,
pictures on
yeah, well, we
mountains
just got the
and-
video today.
Ah,
Yeah, it's a 2 minutes, 20-second video, and it's amazing. So, Lassen's youngest daughter did the photography for the wedding, and her second youngest daughter's partner did the videography. So there's a little bit of nepotism running there, you know, but he did an amazing job. I mean, it is extraordinary. You know, a
yeah.
little bit
You
of-
got married in the US?
Yeah, we got married. So we met, it was still dark, up above the Snowbird Ski Resort in the Washots Mountains of Utah. So it's outside Salt Lake City. And we drove up there, we arrived up there, it was still dark, and the video shows it. And then I was dressed in my wedding suit, and I had a pair of runners on, and I had my wedding shoes with me. And she was dressed in a beautiful white wedding dress with hiking shoes on. And we hiked 45 minutes up the mountain, yeah, in the dark with lanterns. And we got up there, and
This
there's
sounds like every girl's dream wedding, JT.
well,
Yeah.
she planned the whole thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what my part in it was?
Turn
I-
up.
I had to be in Salt Lake City by the end of the day on the 23rd of August. I nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, seriously nailed it, right? The rest was all Lassen. And my good mate Graham Shotter, who I studied phys ed with, and we shared a house together, we went to the States in December 13th, 1983, and he never came back. He's now an artist living over there. And Shodsy played about, I don't know, 10 or 15 games for North and about the same for St Kilda, so he wasn't a bad footballer. And anyway, we flew him in from Bellingham in Washington to come in and be my best man, right? Had to have a witness, right? So anyway, we get up there and we get up to this lake. It's called Secret Lake, Secret with a C. And it's beautiful right up there in the mountains, you know, and the sun was starting to rise and it was getting light. And there's this huge rock over on the edge of the lake. And we thought, let's get married up there, barefoot.
Yeah.
So we were barefoot, standing on this rock, and we did our vows. And as we were pronounced husband and wife, the sun peeked over the mountaintop.
It's a sign.
Perfect, just like
Yeah.
that. It was amazing. It was so spectacular.
And did you have a celebrant or a priest or?
Yeah, so one of our friends actually did the work to get her license so she could marry us. Yeah, it was her first one. She did a brilliant job. Hope Clark, she was amazing. And yeah, so we were actually 10,000 feet above sea level.
Wow.
Yeah, so it really was rarefied atmosphere, you know,
And you've got it all on film,
all on film.
JT. And
All on film.
and
yeah.
I got married in a backyard in Footscray. I bought a tent / marquee from Bunnings. I had 15 people. There's something special about those small weddings, though.
We had 7 people.
There you go. I didn't think there could be a wedding smaller than mine.
yeah. Did you film it? I don't think there is any.
No, we didn't film it. I had an ice cream cake. Yeah, I had an ice cream
Was it
cake.
summer?
It was summertime. I think it. Oh, geez, when did I get married? Now, hang on. I can't remember the date now. No, it wasn't summertime. It was the long weekend in June.
Yeah, right.
You were the best man, weren't you?
No, I think you got Jonesy to be the best.
Oh,
man.
did I?
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a bridesmaid.
You were next. Yeah. Hey, if Jonesy couldn't make it, you were the next one I would have called on. And we got, or when I say we, I mean me and my wife, I don't mean Justin and I. We got a fellow comedian who had done his licence as a celebrant to marry us as well. Yeah.
And was he able to get through it without cracking a joke?
We kept it quite short because my wife had only been in Australia on and off for 2 years.
Right.
So I'm not even sure if she knew what the vows were, really. And so all done in English. And
Yeah.
she had a friend of hers from Thailand that was there. So I just said, I need you to make this the shortest, sharpest wedding you can ever do. He said, there's a bare minimum of things I have to say. And I said, that's what you do.
Fantastic.
And then we sat in the marquee. My wife and her friend did all the cooking, and there was 15 of us.
And she celebrated her visa on the same day, which was
Wow,
great.
yeah, that's right, yeah. And here we are. I think we've been married over 10 years now. Beautiful son who's 9, so it's still working out.
Wow.
We had a little break early on for 4 or 5 years, but let's a time out. I don't know what you'd call it, but
It's Thai tradition.
let's call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And JT, you were saying you were filming your wedding, and that, I think, brings me to a really good point about how we're losing our sense of humour is just the way that everything is filmed these days. And I think if things are filmed for personal use, amazing. When things are filmed to name, shame, and bring people down, that's where we're really struggling in society to keep that sense of humour going, because people now are on a mission to ruin people.
Yeah, and especially when they edit stuff and they take a little piece, like what they did to Trump when he spoke at that rally, and they talked about how he's a Nazi lover and completely twisted it around. I was once talking to a guy who was very high up in the administration of the Queensland government when Joe Bjelke-Petersen was Premier. And I don't know whether you remember, but Joe, when he spoke and the cameras were on him, he always had his hands up. He goes, "You mark my words," and he'd always have his hands like that, one hand or the other. Do you know why he did that?
No.
So they couldn't edit the film.
Right.
He was smart,
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to do this every time somebody's holding a mobile phone near
We
me.
can't be doing that when we're doing stand-up all the time either. Yeah.
But you're right, mate. It's like, I mean, what do we do about that? Because at the end of the day, we're talking to men here in Healthy Masculinity. I get this sense that part of our role with being good, strong, masculine men who've got guardianship for those around us, and care for our environment and our workplace or whatever, when we see somebody that's not doing the right thing, we should step in. Yeah? So why aren't men stepping in? Around footy clubs, you're having conversations around mental health and that sort of thing, and you've got Justin Kaczynski with you, and why aren't men stepping up and just saying, hey, enough, you can't do that, mate?
Yeah, I think, if I can relate this back to comedy and trying to censor things, why aren't people stepping in when people are trying to force comedians to toe the so-called...
You're saying it works both ways.
Well, no, I'm saying, we've got this ethics branding that's come about from organisations and in society. All private companies that people work for, they've all got a code of conduct that says we're inclusive and diverse and that we're environmentally friendly. And, when Chris and I get up on stage and we challenge all those things and we challenge people's thinking, no one will stand up for people who are trying to bring light to situations because they're afraid that there'll be some backlash. And that's why that's why blokes aren't standing up. We're happy to let things go by.
Yeah, you're probably a little more outspoken than me. I sometimes just try and go under the radar.
And we had this conversation this morning, Chriso. Yeah, you said, let's just keep it sort of pretty real today. I said, mate, just be honest. Let's have an honest conversation. That's what's missing in society is people talking honestly. When you have an honest conversation, it might cause debate and, it might be a robust conversation, but it creates differences of opinions and understanding, and I think that creates connection in the long run.
Well, I agree, and I think that whenever men see something and they know they should and they don't, then they degrade themselves because the mind is going to go into justification, or it's going to go into fantasy about what it could have done, but the degrading starts. Whereas when you step up and open your mouth and say what you feel, there's no residue hanging off that. You know, there might be some fear because you don't know what's coming next, but that's stepping into the fight. That's that's what it takes. I remember, like, this is not new, because you remember when the Doors went on Bandstand, they were told, whatever that song was, Girl You Love Takes Me Higher. They said, we don't want you to say that word higher. You've got to take that out, because it was implying that there might be something about being stoned.
Right.
And so the Doors said, yeah, okay, no worries. And they got on there, and Jim Morrison emphasised that word. Girl, we couldn't get much higher. Yeah. And it's that level of, now, there was going to be press blowback on him and not violence, but it does take a lot to really step up and just say, hey, this is not cool. And when somebody comes, if I was at one of your shows and somebody started to mock you for what you're saying, I would stand up and say, well, why is your opinion so important?
Hey.
If you don't like it, go.
Yep, amazing. And JT, we had an incident, as you're well aware of, a few months back where we did a show at a private...
Don't give too many details.
It's all right, we can beep it out. We've got a great editor. Yeah, we'll beep this one out. So we did a show for... We can beep that out.
Yeah.
And, afterwards, as you know... It made the news, and we upset a few people. And afterwards, I got so many messages from people that I knew that were at the show saying how great our performance was and love what you did. Not one of them came out publicly and stood up for us.
Yeah.
And that's the society we're living in, and that's what I want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did you do? What was so controversial?
I did some jokes about Chris's Thai wife.
Right.
Yeah, which the audience always lets you know.
Yeah.
When you're on stage, you know as a comedian if your show's going well or badly.
Yeah.
And on that night, we felt as though, there were some people in the room that weren't enjoying our stuff, but the majority were enjoying our performance.
Yeah.
And that doesn't give people the right who aren't enjoying it to now try and destroy us economically.
Yeah.
And that's what we do.
See, there's a really interesting part to all this that everyone's missing because they get too caught up in the drama. If you want to know what a person's guilty of, listen to what they're accusing others of. So people who get stirred up by what you say, that's because they've got their own transgressions in their life that are similar, but they're justifying it to themselves. And when you say it in front of them, it stirs that up. They get angry and they go, you can't do that. You're bad. You're wrong. But you've got to look where the Buddhists say, when somebody's pointing at you, you got to look where the other three fingers are pointing. And as another friend of mine said, she's beautiful, she said, if you spot it, you got it.
Yes, what a great saying.
And it's projection. And so people like that, in those cases, they're just projecting on you. And what I tend to say, what helps me remain calm, is when somebody's attacking and criticising like that, I just, in my mind, I just go, thank you for your confession. I wish you well, and leave it at that. Right?
And that is so true with doing comedy, is the people that criticise us are the same people that are doing recreational drugs. They're the same people that work for unethical companies. They're the same people that have got 3 houses and the negative gearing and paying no tax. I don't judge them for that.
No.
I don't pass any judgment.
Oh, God.
Why do we pass so many judgments on comedians?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a beautiful, beautiful woman in South Australia. Her name is Diana Walter, and she lives down on the out of Adelaide, over on the other side. I forgot the name of the place now. It's over towards where do they do the fishing? The Port Augusta. She's over near there, right? And anyway, she was doing a PR role and community relations role for one of the big companies doing gas, and there's a gas pipeline coming from out western New South Wales into Sydney. And if that pipeline doesn't go through, next winter, people in Sydney are going to freeze because Sydney can get very cold. We know it's much wetter than Melbourne in Sydney, all my Sydney friends. It's much wetter. But seriously, that gas pipeline's essential for Sydney. And they have all these town hall meetings in these towns where they tell the people what they're doing and they share the whole thing. They're really open about it. And she said they get a lot of abuse. And she said this woman came up to her and she said for the first time in her life she felt frightened. This woman was savage, accusing her of being an environmental terrorist and ruining the earth and destroying the ozone layer and giving her everything, you know. And eventually the woman stormed away and she said, I had to go outside and just calm myself and ground myself. And she said, I'm standing outside and she saw the woman walk out the side door across the road into the biggest thumping diesel Toyota.
Just doing her bit for the environment.
What? You know?
And that's right. And that's why it doesn't pay to pass too much judgment, does it?
Yeah, it's so funny, isn't it? So, I mean, I did a gig not long ago, which you and I talked about. So I went up to Echuca to be the guest speaker at a luncheon that they had on the Friday. It was a fantastic day, and there was some good laughs. And Andrew Walker is the senior coach up there, Carlton legend, who took that towering mark with his head bandaged up, you know, and he's got the place jumping, and the footy club is so successful, and they've instituted something that I really love. All the players in the senior team, they've got coaching roles in the junior teams.
Great.
Yeah? And he said to the club when he walked in, we're not going to go shopping for talent outside. We're going to find the talent in this town. And they've put together and they've restored this institution that is a pillar of the community. And I have this belief that local footy clubs, local cricket clubs, soccer clubs, rugby clubs, they are foundations that can bring stability to a community. You guys are tripping around. How's it going out there in the local footy world?
Yeah, well, I think football clubs and cricket clubs and sporting clubs in general, they're still great places for kids to be around. The problem is that there's not enough kids around them anymore, and cricket is dying. Wow. And I find, and I'm only sort of reiterating what you're saying, JT, is that sporting clubs are great places to teach kids things. You learn respect. If you learn how to respect an umpire, then what do you do at home? You respect your siblings. You respect your parents.
Yeah.
You learn great things. If you're honest around a football club and, you're taught not to pick things up that don't belong to you, to return things if you find them, then you take those life lessons with you.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing. I just do everything I can to make sure that my kids are involved in team sports.
So interesting. I caught up with a guy yesterday, and he's a safety manager for a big company, and mad footy fan. And he said that he once went into the rooms at Collingwood Footy Club after a game, and he said everyone was gone. And Ranald McDonald, who was the president of Collingwood at the time, was in there cleaning the change rooms. And he said, I was shocked. And went over and said, Mr. McDonald, what are you doing? You know, he said, you're the president. You should be at the function. He goes, yeah, I know, but, this needs to be done, Doing the right thing. Now, I knew Ranald. I was in business with him. And he was such a deeply decent man. And I'm wondering, part of the challenge is, do you know much about RecLink?
Yes, a little.
So Adrian Panozzo, who was a former umpy, good mates with Andrew Phillips, former Carlton player, he set up RecLink, and it was designed to get resources to kids who didn't have resources so that they could play sport. Footy boots, cricket bats, whatever, basketball, even putting money into setting up getting footy fields into a condition that kids... And I wonder about around those communities. So if I'm a man living in wherever I live and I attach myself to a local footy club, can I then go and say, okay, how many kids around here are in a single parent family and the parent just doesn't have the time to get them to footy. How can we get those kids and pick them up and bring them down to the footy club? But on the same note, what about all the retired old people around the place who are a bit disconnected, a bit lonely? How can we bring them down to the footy club?
Absolutely.
And ask them if they want to roll, or they can just watch the game, or they can play a role. I mean, there must be some very smart older people who are very good with finance. I mean, I don't know. How can we build these communities, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, because Justin and I come from a school teaching background, I'll often, and we still get in the classroom and teach a few days, and I'll often say, especially on a Friday afternoon, last class of the day, I'll say to kids, right, who's playing sport on the weekend? And back when we were kids, it was 20 out of 25 kids playing sport. And now it's 5 out of 25 that are playing sport. And the cost is one thing, but I don't know why the government, and I know they do have a little bit of funding, but it should be free for every kid to play sport. Because you look at some sports, my son plays Aussie rules, and I think it's $300 or $400, and that's okay. But if you've got a couple of kids, that starts to get a bit expensive. Soccer, I think, is up around that $1,000 mark. How many families with multiple kids could not afford to pay $1,000 if you've got 3 kids, $3,000? It's great at a community level, but it's got to come from a government institutional level where kids know that they can play sport for free.
And in an ideal world, parents would be the drivers of this, but parents tend not to parent their kids these days. It's more up to the teachers at school. So maybe it starts in schools. Maybe we start educating kids in schools. I've got this out there theory with education is that every day of the week should finish at school with sport. Or Monday to Thursday, we have sport after lunch, and then Friday after lunch, you get to go home early if you've played sport Monday to Thursday. We've got to get kids moving again.
Yeah, my son does, so he's grade 4, he does half an hour a week at school. A young boy, 9 years old, he gets a 30-minute block. Yeah. So obviously, I get him out there playing sport, but it's not enough.
So then little boys who are getting a half hour a week and they're getting agitated in the classroom.
Join the dots.
They've been diagnosed as ADHD or, you know, I mean, little boys are wild, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, little girls too, but little boys they're full of growth hormone. Their motor's running. They've got to get out and run around, you know, and then you come in, give them a bit of a lesson. I mean, God, my son's nearly 35 now, and he just didn't like school. He would sit there and look out the window all day. Couldn't wait to get out of the classroom. If it wasn't for the music room, he mightn't have made it through school.
Yeah.
Because he got the music award every year and failed everything else dismally. And now, at nearly 35, he's a profoundly successful businessman. So there's no problems with his intelligence. But, you know, we've got this, I don't know, fear that we're going to sit these kids down and just keep filling them up with information, and we're indoctrinating them rather than teaching them how to learn.
Yeah. It's as educators, see, I'd like to see, aside from sport, I'd like to see some more hands-on stuff. I'd love to see teenage kids being able to go to school and work on a car, you know, pull apart a lawnmower, pull apart a motorbike. Just doing a bit more of that practical stuff. Obviously your English and your maths is extremely important, but you can learn a lot of that stuff doing that practical stuff as well.
And you've got to read manuals, you know.
Yeah.
You gotta
You
know what I mean?
And we used to get this type of education at home, JT, from our parents, but I just want to know what's happened to the 8-hour working day that parents used to work. It's gone.
Well, it comes back again to what you were talking about before. And see, there was an amazing book written about 20 years ago, a bit more than 20 years ago, called Status Anxiety, where people are so concerned about what other people think. Yeah? And so I remember I was doing some work for ESSO years ago. I mean, they set me up big time. I'm lucky I pulled it off because they rang me and said, can you do stress management? And I said, yeah, I can do stress management. Oh, great. Can we book you for a stress management talk? I said, yep, no worries. Where is it? They said, down at Longford. It was a few weeks after the massive explosion down there.
Yeah. Right. So you're in to fix the problem. Yeah. I hope you charged them
But I
well.
was lucky. I didn't charge them anywhere near enough because I saved their bacon. I really did. And it wasn't because I'm smart. I just followed what I felt when I walked into the room. And luckily it worked. I told them a joke. I told them a really funny joke because I just had this sense that somebody needed to give them permission to laugh, right? But I was learning about this man at Esso who was a fairly senior manager who used to stay in the office until 11 o'clock at night working. And all these people under him would be staying in the office till, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 7:30, And one day he called them all in. He said, "What are you people doing? Go home. Get out of here. 5 o'clock, go. I come in here, I work late at night because my wife died. I'm on my own. I really love the quiet of the evening. I do my best creative work then. That's my choice. If I send you an email at 10:30, respond tomorrow. You don't have to respond tonight." But they were all in this mindset that because he was doing what he was doing, that they had to conform to something without ever asking the question. So there's no courage in that. And I feel here a huge part of this thing of people learning to step up and be deliberate about their life is getting some courage back.
Yeah, grow some bloody balls, people.
Yes, exactly.
What's happened to
Well,
the
you can
worker?
have them artificially implanted now too if you're born without them. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. Is there something you're trying to tell us here, JT? I just want to know what's happened to the average everyday worker who now thinks that they're subservient to the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
I don't get it.
Well, it comes down to finances, doesn't it? Money's become so important.
But it shouldn't be. It's like, because if, let's just say I'll give you a job, right? And we sit down and I say, this is a job description. It's 40 hours a week. This is what I want you to do. You can start at this time, finish at that time. And I'm going to pay you this amount of money. And we sign the agreement. Well, we've got an agreement, right? If it gets to the point where you're not getting your work done until 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30, it's one of two things happening. Either you're not putting in the work or I'm giving you too much work, which means I'm breaking our agreement. So have you got the courage to come back to me and say, JT, we need to have a look at our agreement because it's not working. It's not how we discussed it at the start. But you've also got to have the courage to walk away if I won't come to the table. You know? It's agreements. And I don't think we teach kids enough. I mean, I've had some brutal lessons in life where I haven't kept agreements because I thought it was okay to be a bit flexible, But I've learned how crucial it is. Your word is so important. And you have an agreement and you commit to it and you follow through. I mean, are there tens of thousands of people sitting there at their desk too frightened to speak up because their agreement's not working?
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, we've all become scared. We're running scared, and yeah, it's a real shame. And that flow-on effect from people not having the courage to stand up is resulting in us not parenting our kids the right way, and it's resulting in kids not playing sport. Yeah, it's resulting in kids being depressed, which there's all these flow-on effects from people not being able to stand up and say, hey, yeah, this agreement is no longer working because I'm working 80 hours a week.
Yeah. I mean, it's stupid. It's ridiculous. It's and people work and then they go home at night and pull their laptops out and work again. Now, there's one of two reasons for that. Either they haven't got the courage to handle what's going on at work, or it's their exit from discomfort around their relationship, which means they're breaking an agreement there as well.
Yep.
And the challenge is when you break agreements, you start degrading yourself and your mind starts going crazy because it's trying to justify everything. And
You tend to get your laptop out and work a bit more at home than I do.
Yeah, I do. And at risk of losing my teaching registration here, I can see exactly why we have a shortage of teachers. That agreement is not working.
Yeah.
It's just common sense. People don't want to teach anymore because you're not doing a 40-hour week.
No. And I think part of that is too with when you've got gigantic education departments, there's people sitting in there looking for something to do, and they come up with some harebrained idea of another level of compliance that teachers should, with no clue of what they're actually doing, what the ripple effect of that is.
Yeah.
You know?
I'll tell you how I lost my last teaching job, JT. And when I say last teaching job, this is the last full-time teaching job that I had. We had to go into the school, and once again, I won't mention the school, and we had 2 days of OH&S training. And at the end of the second day, we had probably a booklet that thick of policies, procedures and forms that we had to fill out. And as I walked out the door, I just chucked them in the bin.
Good on you, though.
Yeah, and I got to the end of my 1-year contract and they said, out you go.
But you also got moved on from another job. This is back in the day when Justin and I were teaching on a more regular basis. But what was the other reason you got fired for? I think you got fired, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I was working at a school in Sunshine and we got invited to go and do Britain's Got Talent, which meant I had to take 2 weeks off work. And I went into the office thinking, this is amazing. They're going to support me here. They're going to go, oh, this is great. The kids are going to see their teacher on TV and they're going to be inspired. And I went in and said, right, I need the 2 weeks off. And they said, if you go, you're sacked. And once again, got to the end of my 1-year contract and out I was again.
Yeah.
But so interesting, isn't it? Good on you for standing your ground and making a decision, because I did the opposite. When I was 23, I was playing footy in the A-grade amateurs. I was playing at Marcelin, having a great season, played in the state team. We beat the VFA, and then we beat South Australia, and then I was selected in the All-Australian squad. And I was managing a gym out in Glen Waverley, and training was on during the day, in the weekdays, because they brought players in from other states. And my boss hated football and said, I'm not giving you the time off to go to training. So I missed one of the training sessions, and that cost me my spot in the team. I was the emergency for the team, right? And I didn't have the courage to say, well, fuck you, I'm going to training, you know? And I've regretted that my whole life, because that would have been an amazing experience.
And I would have regretted it as well if I had stayed behind and not gone and done the show.
It just made me think about a story with our old man. Our dad loved his cricket, and he was a shift worker. He was a nurse. And I think it was finals time. We must have been kids. And he went into his boss and said, listen, the finals are coming up Saturday, Sunday. I need the time off. And the boss said, sorry, we can't do it. And Dad said, have you got a pen and paper? And he goes, yeah, what do you need that for? And Dad started writing out his resignation right there. And, of course, gave it to him, played the cricket finals, and then the job was there when he came back anyway. He goes, you still need someone to work? He goes, yeah, all right, you called me bluff. That was our old man to a T. I think that's where we got our passion for sport from. He just absolutely loved it.
But it is true. I think back in those times, people were more solid in their ability to say, up yours, you know. But now with, social media, people being cancelled, people being attacked, you can either show up and be yourself, or you can cower away and be a coward, But I think cowardice is just another entry point to mental health challenges.
Yep.
Yep.
We've got to start speaking out, speaking the truth and speaking out. It's always a scandal for someone. We've just got to take the risk and stand up for what we believe in. And Chris, we're fighting the battle hard, aren't we?
You're finding it harder than me. Can you leave me out of this?
That's not actual smart. Sorry about that.
Yeah. No, we are.
Uh,
We're just trying to spread the joy, though, aren't we?
That's it.
Well,
Just
I
trying to
think
spread the
that,
joy.
You know, it's what is it? Was it John F. Kennedy or someone said if you trade freedom for security, you'll have neither. You know, and I mean, I think looking back, 2020 hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I never allowed myself to succumb to what the government wanted with the pandemic. Yeah, so yes, I carried a mask around with me, and I would put it on to go into shops, not because I felt like it was the right thing to be wearing a mask, but I didn't want to make other people uncomfortable. I wanted to care for other people. But if I was out walking and that sort of stuff, or running, never wore a mask, didn't have the jab, I was never going to do that. And I ended up counselling a lot of people on the phone right through it who didn't want to do all those things, and they were worried and they were frightened. Some of them hung in, some of them gave in. But it was really interesting when the protest rallies were on. One of them, there was like 200,000 people in the centre of Melbourne. They blocked up the whole CBD. And the ABC reported that there was 10,000 people there. Now, we knew there was more than 10,000 because the organisers got a helicopter to film it. And they were filming it from the air and streaming it through Facebook. And the city was jammed up. Now, those people stood up. And I reckon they've come through the pandemic feeling strong and good. And a lot of people, I reckon, have degraded themselves because they rolled over and then beat other people up who wouldn't roll over. And now they've got to live with the fact that they did that to other people instead of standing firm and saying to the government, you know, I didn't give you a mandate for this.
Yep.
I mean,
I didn't judge anyone either way. I didn't judge anyone either way. And in terms of we had a good pandemic, really, didn't we? Hanging out with the kids. Justin and I were living around the corner from each other.
Right.
Just so happened I'd moved in round the corner, and our two boys are the same age, and I reckon we got through the pandemic a lot better than other people did. Yeah. Enjoyed the family time, enjoyed the time as much as we loved doing stand-up. It was kind of a time where we could switch off after going pretty hard at it for 15 years. And it did make it hard when we went to get back into it again. It was like trying to learn to ride a bike again. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? It's, I mean, for me, I was cool during the pandemic as well, personally, because I'd been travelling 240 days of the year.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I'm at
absolutely.
home,
Yeah, it was the same for us too.
Like
just
so much enjoying being at home, even though I was living on my own for a chunk of it. It was really cool. But I'm amazed. I mean, my older brother, for example, and I'll say this publicly, he was brutal on people during the pandemic and quoting science and all that sort of stuff. And there was no science at all, you know. And I wonder how he feels now from doing that to people on Facebook and attacking people and making these outrageous claims, you know. And really, he was talking through his hat, but it was whatever it was, his self-importance, his need to be heard or whatever. But there was so many people like that, and now they're sitting there looking at, wow, the unvaccinated didn't die, you know. They got through okay, and it's anyway. You guys don't have to say anything about that, but I feel that's all a flavour of this thing of you feel something, stand up and say it, you know.
Yeah, and I think it gets back to that thing, JT. You don't have to be cautious about asking us whether we want to say anything. I just think it gets back to that thing of respecting what people want to do. And I certainly didn't name or shame anyone who was an anti-vaxxer the same way that I didn't name or shame anyone who got the vaccination. So it just pays not to judge people too harshly.
Absolutely.
And it seems like it's all long gone and behind us now. Do we still get
people that are struggling with heart conditions because they've got the jab? Apart from that, it's long behind us. Yeah.
Is it still a thing? I don't even know. I think I had COVID twice and I had a headache for a couple of days, and that was about it.
I've never had it, so.
Yeah, and me neither.
Yeah.
No jab, no COVID, so God knows.
Oh, I've had to. He reckoned. Well, you've never tested positive.
Never
I've had
tested
to
positive.
sit there for the last 4 years and listen to him tell me how he's superhuman. I just think that you're such a grub. COVID wouldn't even go near you. COVID was scared it might catch something.
Well, who knows? I mean, if Trump gets in and he unleashes Bobby Kennedy, I think the whole thing is going to become very prominent again, you know.
Yeah.
But it needs to, because medicine's got to clean its act up. You know, it's really quite... and, you know, I've stood firm on that for a very long time and been a lone voice on a lot of things like cholesterol drugs and all those sorts of things. But the day's coming, you know, where those things are going to get cleaned up a little bit. And I think
Well, we can
do.
only hope. I mean, Chris and I, we've had our battles with opioids, haven't we, Chris? That's
Yeah. Yep.
I battled it for a long time after I
Really?
had a series of concussions and head knocks playing footy. And, yeah, I just turned to opioid medication. And, yeah, I was lucky I got off that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. But you know, you take a look at what it's done. I don't know what the statistics are in Australia, but I know in America, I think opioid addiction killed about 750,000 people
Yeah.
before they stood up and started regulating things a bit better. But yeah, they've got a lot to answer for, some of these pharmaceutical companies, and
Yeah.
I think Chris and I, we're just sort of finding out in our later life and having great mentors like you, JT, that yeah, natural ways of living are just
Yes.
so
We're
good.
going for a run after we're finished here.
Fantastic. I'd
Yeah.
love to join you, but I've promised to get
You
it
won't be
done.
able to keep up, mate.
No. How old are you blokes now?
42,
And how old's he?
41. Yeah. Mum had a long labour.
Yeah, I think when I was 37, I ran a 37-minute 10K. That was
Yeah.
the quickest ever. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow. Well, all right, we're not going at that pace.
But I couldn't run that time down at well right now. You know.
We take our runners with us everywhere we go. Yeah, so we've got a gig later on tonight. We're podcast this afternoon, so that gives us a window in between. We're 10 minutes from the beach here, so we're going to go and take the runners. We've got the towels in the car.
Yeah.
Go for a run. If we can't find somewhere to have a shower, jump in the ocean,
Yeah.
and then off to the gig. And yeah, that's our plan for today. Tomorrow, I don't know what you're doing tomorrow, but I'm getting on the push bike and I'm going to ride around the beach from Williamstown to Altona. I think it's going to be 22.
Beautiful.
Yeah, can't have some lunch when I get to the other end.
Beautiful.
Yeah, ride back.
Yeah, can you believe this? This is one of the craziest comedians that ever lived. 10 years ago, Chriso, you were doing nothing like this.
No. Times have changed, mate. Times have changed.
Yeah. Well, smoker and drinker to elite athlete.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
Exactly.
It's amazing. Well, guys, it's yeah, it's been. I mean, it's been really cool having this conversation, and I love the work that you're doing. And anybody out there who's got a footy club and you want to put on a bit of an event, these guys are amazing. They don't just come and do a comedy show; like they really make a contribution to what you're doing out there, and really help create people laughing together. You know.
Yep.
You know, one of my favourite words is togetherness. And I reckon we can help more and more of these footy clubs create more togetherness and really help to bring in these kids who haven't got an opportunity and bring in the grandpas and the grandmas, you know. There's so much that we can do if we follow what we feel. And I don't know whether you guys ever heard my story about girls' footy.
No.
Did you hear
No.
about it? Well, back in 2003, I was living at Red Hill, and my kids were going to school down there, and my youngest stepdaughter, Tonya, was in grade 6, and Tonya loves sport. She'd come home from school and say, JT, can we go training, you know? And we'd go and run 200s or whatever, you know? And anyway, she had a great school teacher who was a phys ed teacher, and he got the kids into sport. Anyway, she came home one day and she said, there's going to be a girls' footy lightning premiership. So 10 schools were sending a girls' footy team. This is 2003. At the time, I was also the community member on the Committee of Management for the Red Hill Recreation Reserve. And a few weeks before, a letter had been tabled at the meeting saying that the Mornington Peninsula and Nepean football leagues wanted all the footy clubs to start netball teams to get more women involved. And I stood up at the meeting and said, that's the most patriarchal, arrogant thing I've ever heard. Right back and ask them how they'd feel if the netball clubs decided to start footy teams to get more men involved, right? Not going to work. And they said, well, what's the answer? I said, I've got no clue, but, this is not the answer. So here I am a few weeks later, taking Tonya down on the Friday, and she'd been in bed with the flu all week. She was so sick. I was actually by her bed 2 nights straight. She was so sick. And she gets up Friday morning, and I said, are you going to go? And she goes, oh, the team needs me, So I polished her boots. So we went to the game, and they divided them into 2 lots of 5, and they had to pay each team in their lot 2 10-minute halves. So they played 80 minutes of footy. I'm standing there watching these little girls play much harder than the boys, smashing into the packs, really going for it. And I watched Tonya kick 20 goals in 80 minutes.
Wow.
Roosting these left foot torpedoes. I knew she was an athlete, but she could find the footy and she knew where the handle was, right? And I'm standing there watching this thinking, oh my God, this is the future of suburban footy right here. And so I decided to act on it. And I picked up my phone and I rang David Parkin. And Parko answered the phone. He's a brilliant guy. I don't know whether you've ever met David Parkin, but
No.
he's just, he's a guardian angel of sport in this country, and he's got a little bit of dementia now, But said, Parko, it's Toombs here. Shut up and listen. And so I told him the whole story about the meeting and the letter and what was going on in front of me. I said, Parko, this is the future of suburban footy. And he got it immediately. He's an old phys ed lecturer,
Yeah.
And he said, hang up, I'm going to ring Laurie Woodman, who is Vic Sport. And he calls back on a 3-way call and he said, tell Laurie what you just told me. So I told Laurie all that, and we agreed that we were going to go into Football Victoria Tuesday morning. So we basically barged into their office and we sat down and said, we're not leaving till you do something. And we explained it all to them, and they agreed to appoint a female field officer. And in that was an example of me seeing something, but then David Parkin realising this is really significant. We don't need to take action. We need to take big action. And he just stepped into it, and look what we got.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Look what we got, And I feel if we can inspire more men out there to step into what they feel and take action, and when the opportunity's there, take big action, a lot of this DEI shit is going to disappear. Because the people, the evangelists and the agitators, they're going to realise that there's a wall there that's too big to climb over.
Build the wall. Build the wall.
Build the wall. Build the wall, man.
No, awesome, mate. It's just been great. Thanks for having us on.
Always great to chat to you, JT. I have got my corn fritters there that I've been waiting to eat for an hour.
Yeah, well, they're
Cold corn fritters.
But I've got one quick question to ask you both.
Absolutely.
Before we finish, so when you were growing up, it doesn't matter whether you were 5 or 15, who was somebody that came into your life and you looked at them and you went, that's the person I want to be like? That's somebody who's, yeah.
Do you know what? I look at our old man, and there seems to be this theory that we've got to judge parents. They're either good parents or they're bad parents.
Yeah.
And our dad had some really bad attributes. He was a big drinker. He was a bit of a lad, but he also had some really positive attributes, and we followed him everywhere he went playing sport, particularly cricket. So
I think, and you can pick the best parts out.
Yeah,
and
so
the things that you don't like, you change and try and do them better yourself.
Yeah, so to answer that question, our old man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, he must have been, is he still around?
No, we lost him a couple of years ago, but he laughed, and we all laughed right till the end.
Yeah.
He never, ever lost his sense of humour.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. That just feels amazing, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, well done, guys. Well, thank you so much. Keep up the awesome work. You've only got another 62 years left.
Another 62. So what? Do the math. How long we're gonna live to 104? Is it?
Well, you're going to work till you're 104.
And then retire.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this amazing episode of the Good Bloke, Not Woke podcast. And as I always say, try to be that adult that you needed when you were a little kid and you were scared or you're in trouble. Thanks very much for tuning in. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, JT.